Okay, we're live, Gary.
Okay, good morning everyone, and welcome to our Oswego County Industrial Development Agency meeting of March 23rd, 2023. And before we begin the meeting, I'd like to ask Kevin LaMontagne to introduce the guests or the staff that are present, and then I will have our Secretary Treasurer, Len Schick, do a roll call of board members to ensure we have a quorum.
All right, thanks, Gary. Staff members present, we have Austin Wheelock, the Chief Executive Officer of the agency, myself, Kevin LaMontagne, I'm the CFO of the agency, and Kevin Caracoli, our General Counsel.
Okay.
There are no guests today.
Okay. Gary Toth.
Present.
Mark Greco.
Present.
Barry Trumbull.
Present.
Len Schick is present. Tricia Peter Clark.
Excuse.
Present.
Nope.
Oh, she's on.
Oh, she's on. Oh,
Yeah.
she is right there.
Present. Nick Canale is excused. Tim Stahl.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Len. Okay, we'll get down to our agenda. In the portal, you saw the minutes of February 23rd, 2023. I hope everybody had a chance to review them. Is there, do I have a motion and a second?
I'll make that motion.
Motion and a second on, motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second on the minutes. Are there any additions, errors, or corrections on the minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Carried. Good morning, Trish.
Good morning.
Okay, the notice of the meeting was published in the Palladium Times on March 10th, 2023. And number 3 on our agenda is the Treasurer's Report for the fiscal year to date, February 28, 2023. And I will turn it over to Austin and
We
Kevin.
need to move.
Huh?
Are we gonna move it?
Oh, the minutes?
No treasury report we just talking about, we'll move it, I'll move it. Second.
Oh, okay. I was gonna have them explain it, and then I was gonna,
You need to put it on the table. For
okay, motion?
Sorry.
So Barry made it, and then Mark seconded.
Mark second, yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, are the, any additions, errors, questions, or comments?
Yes, I think it was very well done. I was very, very impressed. Simple, easy to read, compared to what we had before. The ones before were hard to go through and understand, and you guys did an outstanding job.
I was gonna say the same thing, it's the best balance sheet I've seen since they've been here. Good, so,
Credit goes to Kevin LaMontagne. We talked about it, how it should be laid out and the information that should be in there, how it should be different than it is. And he put it together, and I mean, instead of you guys looking at 1 month at a time, 5 months behind, we have the last, we have 7 months. We're up to date. We're not even at the end of March yet, and we have through the February 28th. So I'll turn it over to Kevin LaMontagne to kind of go through it and explain our position and answer any questions you guys have.
Yeah, I thought I'd spend time today more as an overview of the statements, kind of, so you can see how things are grouped and things of that nature. But as time goes on, we'll be spending maybe a little bit more time on the financials in these meetings and things as we go. Thank you for the positive comments. The balance sheet, one of the things Austin and I tried to accomplish with this was really to separate, not just in the balance sheet, but also in the income statement, things that are, in our words, not necessarily GAAP words, but are restricted or available to use to further the IDA's mission, like pay OC or other things the IDA might pay for. So on the balance sheet, we see cash. Obviously, cash typically starts off. I'm looking at the asset side first, but you see all those restricted cash items, and we've relabeled the accounts to make them sort of self-explanatory to us and to all of us in this room based on the loan funds that we use and other things, including the pilot EDF is there, which we have another report on that later in the meeting. Fixed assets is land. In the IDA's case, only at this time only owns land. Other times has owned buildings, but you can look at the parcels and what the IDA owns are clearly labeled there. Then we get into the long list of open loans, broken by the loan funds in a little more detail than it was before. HUD loans are broken out, which we've never had before, on near the bottom of page 2. Loan loss reserves are labeled. Then we look at our liabilities, which is arguably an important place to spend some time, but really it's fairly clean with our loans payable to the USDA for both IRP funds, The deferred revenue is relating to federal loans, and this is always a topic when the auditors present the audited statements in it. To be quite frank, it is a bit of weird accounting to have loan payments and loan fundings on your income statement, but when which we'll get to here in a moment, but when you do that, the other side of that is this deferred revenue, and it has to do with federal loan accounting rules. So that's pretty much the balance sheet. The next single page income statement. Similarly, you'll see some different splits in the organization than maybe we have done before, where we've taken the liberties to make this a really hopefully a useful management report for the board and for us in the office, not so worried about where these things may roll in our audited statements versus how we're showing them here. So we have income, group the lease incomes together, and also our lease distributions to the city of Fulton and the Fulton CDO for the Hudamaki parcel. This is a piece of land that Hudamaki uses part of their loading dock, I believe, and sort of owned by the IDA, but jointly funded originally. So we pay them part of the lease. So we have our real property. We can see our farm lease income has come in for this year for $11,971. Interest from our general savings, and then our admin fees at the very top. So that first group of income is basically our non-restricted income in a sense. Then we'll come down in other income to some of the restricted incomes that we get. We see our expenses sort of organized with the OOC payment, of course, being the most significant, up at the top in 4.5, and then the other income down in other income and expenses are some of those odd things. Well, not so much odd, but restricted income like bank income that we get on our loan funds goes back into the loan funds of the IDA, so that's restricted. We can't really spend that to, for example, pay OOC. And then of course the interest we earn on the loan funds coming in there, and the pilot share of the county, the reinstated 10% has started with the January pilot invoices, which was Novellus and Stephen Orloff's. We see the IDA's 10% share of those two pilots, which have been paid. So that'll obviously balloon now when we see the March statement, so we'd expect that that will be much higher. So then in other expense, we see this, I'm just going to call it strange, federal loan accounting again, which is principal repaid is actually an income, a negative expense in other words, and then loans funded, we've funded 2 microloans so far this fiscal year that are federal loan programs, and we booked those at 75%. And I can try to explain why. And then pilot EDF expense, this is very new. One of the things that makes looking at the IDA financials a bit complex is that when we pay for something that isn't a capital investment, like say we do a cost share with the county for the sewer at the airport, real example, we would get a bill from the county, and in the past we would have just booked it and it would flow through regular expense. So then looking where this there in the top half of the page under expense, it's more or less our operating expenses. But pilot EDF expenses really come from that fund. They come from this, this older money that we've reserved, and it isn't. Although it's part of our operation to fund that airport sewer project, it's not really a week-to-week, month-to-month operating expense. So we're going to see how it goes, but we started to separate anything we pay out of pilot EDF down to this line. And as that number gets bigger, we could probably provide some more detailed accounts too to show the different spending, or provide a separate report on that. But at the moment, it's one bill from CNS Engineers for some work at the new land down at the LMTIP. So that's, without jumping into really the numbers and results, it's just an overview of the statements. So.
Yeah, LMTIP.
Yeah.
Took me a second. It took me a second. I got it now.
It's shorter than LMTOCIP.
Yeah, we're still workshopping that.
Okay,
So
thanks,
those are the
Kevin.
statements year to date.
Is any, okay.
Yeah, I did. This is amazing to both Austin and Kevin. I really appreciate what you put into this. It's intuitive. It's easy to understand. I think that anyone who wanted to quickly understand kind of where we are right now as a group could look at this and would not be confused. So excellent job. Thank you so much.
And I also want to explain, as someone who's new coming into this role, it's better for me to be able to understand. So us doing this going forward in this way and having more control over the statement is just better for us as an organization.
What were we paying Alder roughly?
Well, we also about $96,000 a year.
It was
right,
$9,600 a year.
Okay.
Yeah, it also included it.
Then we did some.
There was some other stuff like
yeah,
there was some 990 stuff and some other things, or not
And
990,
some,
but
this budget report we're gonna review next. you
yeah,
said, so,
1099s
yeah.
and some other
Okay,
things too.
okay,
So.
just curious.
Just what we'll see, yeah.
But I mean, I think that, you know, we've taken some of the things. The one thing that we didn't show here, and Kevin, you know, we can explain a little bit, is the loan stuff. We've actually worked on that through the end of the year. We're just trying to get that caught up to where this is, so that'll be at the next month's meeting. We'll have that, but we have a handle on doing that too.
Joe Jack's sheet had a very valuable reference in the back that was all the loans the IDA has ever made. We've recreated that, but we're just tweaking it, a few edits, so we'll include that next time.
Yeah, we figured this was enough for today.
Yeah, no, that, I mean, that took a lot to, understand and go through and look at them all. Yeah, that was complicated.
But we figured that it was great. It was good to have. We were originally anticipating doing it through the end of the year, but we were able to get through the end of February. Now going forward, we'll be caught up on a month basis. And so I'm happy with how this turned out, and really appreciate what Kevin put into this.
Awesome job by you both.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah, is there any other questions or comments? Did I get a motion and a second?
It's been moved, it's been
Oh,
moved.
that's right, okay.
Tricia, did you have any questions? Did you get to see
I did
this?
do discussion, but first,
I didn't mean to.
it's okay. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah.
I'll catch up.
So Austin, I don't have any questions. I was just gonna comment and echo the statements from the rest of the team that this is much nicer to see the whole delineation of basically the report here with everything that we have going out to support business development. It's nice to see all that that's listed there. And there's a lot of investment that's supported by the IDA, which is nice to finally see that.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, so we, all those in favor, we did that. Any opposed? Okay, the treasurer's report is accepted. And very nice job, everyone. Number 4, the projections and budgets.
Austin, you wanna take this, or?
Sure. Well, I can start it, and I guess we can kind of do the same thing, and if we tag team this. So this is something we have to do on a yearly basis. This is related to the parish reporting for the IDA. We need to one, go in and update what the actual was for 22, which is this left column here is what the actual costs were. And then we have to put in what our estimated is going to be for 23, and then we have to sort of do like projections for the next kind of 4 years forward. So another thing that we had done is we went back and looked at what we had done in the past, and we went through and said, listen, we need to update these based on what information is currently. There's a couple things in here that if you look at the 2022 year, you're gonna say, oh wow, that doesn't look great on here, and then you look, okay, it looks good going forward. Some of that is the recapitalization of the pilot EDF, that $200 and some odd $1,000 is definitely helping the numbers look better. But we also have, I think, some more realistic projections in terms of what we think that the income's going to be coming in via fees as well as loans and other things. So I think it's just, especially with where interest rates are today, we don't think they're going to be there forever, but we're trying to project a little bit better and have a more realistic budget and projections going forward. So this is something that we are asking to be adopted so that we can authorize to file it with New York State with ABO and the parish report. But turn it over to Kevin too in terms of any numbers in particular that we did on here. But this was another thing we did together, and we think it's a pretty good, accurate description.
I mean, I think it's like we did for the when we discussed the fee with OOC. This is really a bottoms-up approach, also when you say versus
Yes.
trying to take what was done in the past and just kind of roll it forward. Which
Yeah.
we saw some things, and I mean one thing, and I'll back up a little bit to the financials we just approved. You see the operating expenses where it's sort of herky-jerky up from 530 last year, 630 this year, down to 555 going forward. That is the effect of the cost share with the secession cost at OOC, $103,000. When the IDA agreed to cost share with OOC for Mike's secession, it was $103,000.
Okay.
And that was booked, we've already paid that through February, so that's in the statements we just reviewed as well. As looks like a higher OOC administrative cost in the IDA statements, but So that jumps up this year, we've taken care of that in these projections, and then seen that level, you know, obviously that's a one-time expense, going forward, but significant.
Do we, need a motion for this then?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yes.
need
I'll make that motion.
authorization of
Okay,
funds.
do I have a second? Motion by Tim Stahl, second by Mark Greco, on the authorization to file with the state. Is there any more additional questions?
Yeah, I have just discussion on this. This is another form that I've had voiced some concern about in the past, and I'm very encouraged by the way this looks this year. Thank you. This is, like you said, this is, I don't know if reimagined is the right word, but it definitely, you know, we've been talking a lot with this idea of government, and we are kind of pseudo-government, transparency, and I think the way this is put together along with the financial statements, steps in the right direction. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tim. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big jump, 56% roughly in services and everything. Is that pretty, you think, because of Micron, because of?
Oh, you mean in terms of charges for services? Yeah, I think that we're, you know, we had a light year last year, so that 202 was not
Yeah.
typical. Our typical year is probably closer to that 350, so we're actually,
Okay.
you know, and then looking at projecting where we are for 23 based on what we've done to date, we've done, you know, I think in 7 months we did a little over 200, so we're projecting that 303 based on where we think we are for the year, so.
We know of
Yeah.
at least one other close.
But projections are more based on trends and what we know, and then, you know, these numbers are based on some more, you know, it was a light year last year.
Well, see, and I didn't realize that. I was
Yeah.
just looking at the 202.
Sure,
and
yeah.
So.
Well, it would probably be good to have a previous year in here too, but we can't put that into the Paris stuff, so that's not something we show on this.
Yeah.
We're showing you the actual form that we have there for that, but yeah, a typical year is gonna be closer to that 350, and we anticipate with Micron things going on that we're gonna see higher years, but this is an average we're looking at. Yep.
And I don't know if it correlates, but, you know, the OOC meeting, board meeting was Monday, and I was kind of recapping to somebody of the meeting, and giving them a sense of what investment locally there is, or at least in the county, and in the projects that were reviewed and in that board meeting, I counted up total investment, not IDA related, but just a project investment of over $70 million in projects right now, just in this, you know, second quarter of 23. So I don't know how that compares to other years, but that's a pretty good.
And none of those are micro investments.
And none of those are micro
No, and that's
investments.
not,
None of them are micro.
and that's not Novellus or these other projects that are, you know, every once in a while that are just outsized. These are the projects that we see are gonna be typical, yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
The only thing is, the grants and donations piece, is that directly related to the next idea? Or
No, that's not related to that, that's related to Ready
That's what I was
mostly.
gonna ask, so, okay, so what's the donations here for?
So in 2022, we funded 20,000 of it is money for Ready. This Greenpoint Marina and Greenpoint Mobile Home Park completed already process in New York State, and we passed it through OOC to them. So was expense for the IDA, it's income and expense for OOC as a pass through
okay.
to the client.
Is that money that we
The other
receive though,
12,
would there be a,
No, that was our local cost share that we agreed to do this.
Yeah.
Why in
It
2020
was
or
the,
something.
it was the best way to go forward
What's
on
that?
that.
Was it the search?
No.
No, this is,
5% Ready match.
yeah, it was this Ready, the Lakeshore, Ontario Lakeshore Ready
Yeah, I didn't know
stuff,
if you
yeah.
said the other 12. I
Oh,
didn't know if.
no, that's up, the severance stuff is this year, in 2023.
okay. So I guess
Yeah.
it's just, it's
I
zeroed
just-
out
the
for the
other
rest
12.
of, is there no expect, I mean, obviously.
We're not
one time-
expecting, that was a one-time kind of a thing, but, you know, hey, if there's an opportunity and the IDA wants to look at throwing some money at NGI or something like that going forward, we can look at it, but it's not budgeted or projected as of now.
Understood.
The IDA contributed to the search committee costs. I don't know if that's reflected, Kevin, in that.
But you're saying that would've been-
somewhere else. but-
Will that have been 22 expense though?
No, that's in 23,
It is, okay.
in the other operating revenues, yeah.
Okay.
IDA fiscal 23, yeah.
Got it.
Okay, any other questions?
That's what that is.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the projection budgets authorization is passed. Nice job, gentlemen. Notification of allocation, of initial allocation.
Yeah, I can run through.
Yeah, if you want to do that,
This is a
it's
quick
pretty,
one.
it's pretty easy.
No vote needed or anything, but every year we report to the board the amount of private activity bond allocation that the state through or Department of Economic Development actually has allocated to us in Oswego County. This is the money allocated to us to do basically manufacturing bonds or industrial revenue bonds or private activity bonds, or they have a lot of different names, but this is for the IDA's bond issuance, which, as we know, doesn't include not-for-profits anymore. But reality is, in my opinion, probably no one would go through the process of getting a IDA industrial revenue bond for $4,695,000, probably be 10 at the max,
Yeah.
especially these days with construction costs. So if we did have an application, we would have to just go to the state and ask for an increase in allocation. And they allocate money all around to all the counties or all the IDAs, I guess, in the states, and then there's some extra that we can pull from a pool.
And the other thing to know is that if you don't use it in a year, it doesn't roll over. It just it kind of goes back, and it's use it or you lose it kind of a thing. But it's
because it's tax exempt. There's a certain amount allocated to New York, and then New York divvies that up to the IDAs.
And I'll also state that, I think the last time that we actually used this this fund for this was probably Fulton Companies when Kevin was there, because there just hasn't been an appetite for tax exempt bond financing in the last probably decade because of where interest rates have been with banks. Now, we may see this change at a certain point. We've been in contact with our with bond counsel about that to get a feel for what types of projects are being funded with it right now, if any. And but I do think that with rates going from where they were to where they are now, there may be some more opportunities. So this may be something that comes back up again in the near future.
Is the turnaround to raise that limit quick enough? Would it make sense if we're, it's not like does it make sense to request an increase in the limit proactively?
We have to have a
You have
project.
to have a
We do,
project.
okay.
Yeah. Without having a project, there's no necessity.
Got it. Okay. I just wasn't sure where the 4.6 number came from. Is
It's calculated on population, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It changes every year. We get this note.
Oh,
so-
last year it was, sorry,
It was a little bit lower than by
I have it here.
200,000 or something like that. It was like 4.4.
Yeah, 4.30.
So this is just for information?
Yep.
We don't have to do anything.
No.
Is that something we would want to solicit? If we would get to the point where it would make sense to? I mean, is there any projects you've heard of? I mean, I know it's in your knowledge base, so if it were to pop up, you'd be like, we know this thing, but.
I think in the doing business, we're aware of projects that would fit, and I wouldn't want to try to. It's something that project really needs to fit. And if typically we're already working with somebody, that a project like this would come in play, because they're also then eligible for the pilot benefits and things as well. So if it's a project that we know of that's going to need financing, we're probably already talking to them about it.
Understood. And there probably won't be one that you don't know about.
For something like this,
Call,
no.
they're like, oh, it's a great idea, let me start.
For a project like this, no, that's not something small is not gonna fit for this kind of project. Like Kevin said, it's probably gonna be a project that's gonna be up towards that limit of the $10 million.
It's a funny limit of $10 million because it's out of date by about 30 years. And
They never update.
It's a very small keyhole, like a needle you have to thread to make this program work. Because if you're Novellus, $10 million is, sort of a rounding error in the project cost. If you're small, if you only need $5 or $6 million to put up a modest building, this program is too top heavy. It just doesn't make sense to participate in it. So you have to be this kind of manufacturer, like Fulton Companies was perfect size. I think to make sense, the bond level probably has to be over $7 million, and the project then, because you can't put the whole project in the bond, it's probably a $12 million project minimum.
Total project cost can't exceed 20
It has to be
million.
manufacturing.
It's like you gotta get into this, small window. So that's why I say, we'll know if there's a
Buildings
project
these
that
days
fits.
aren't that cheap. I mean, 100,000 square foot manufacturing building these days is, probably $20 million. So, once fitted out, so we'll see. If we ever have an opportunity to talk to our federal representatives, raising that cap would be a good thing.
So we're talking about other funding. You saw the county pass that CPACE, I think it's called CPACE. Is that anything that you've heard anything more about? Is that coming? Anybody reached out to you folks here at the?
We've talked to a couple groups. I mean, one in particular is the Village of Pulaski. We've talked to about that. In terms of significantly rolling it out, marketing it, that's to come. But it's a program we think could have some definite value. It's just another tool in the toolbox, and it's a nice one.
Okay, cool. And the legislator Gilson has been very interested in it, so just want to keep it on that.
Yep.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, anything else on the, private activity bonds? Okay, moving on, number 6, Market House Oswego Brewing Company.
Yeah, I could start on that too. So just to kind of give, so as you remember, last year we had approved an initial resolution. I believe it was like June, July timeframe of last year. A lot has kind of happened since then. Just to refresh your memory, the Market House is the redevelopment of the multi-story old City Hall building in the city of Oswego, and they're turning it into a mixed-use waterfront property that'll include a brewery on first floor and basement, and then 2 floors of market rate apartments. Very nice market rate apartments. It's a 18,000 square foot project. It has a total project cost of $8.5 million, and it's going to create 20 FTE jobs. What we're looking at this point is that, so since we had that, they have applied for several different funding pots. They applied for Restore New York. They anticipated getting a larger award. It ended up being a smaller award. There were, I guess it's, we've had some successful projects funded in Oswego County. There's 3 projects funded through Restore New York for a total of $3.5 million, and unfortunately the funding that they were looking for, it was cut down. So they've done a little bit of changing of what the project is. They've come back to the IDA. They've updated their original application. We are looking to pass a new initial resolution based on changes to the project, and then also some recommendations we've received from Barclay Damon in terms of including both entities, both 1836 Brewing as well as Market House in the documents as part of the project. So that is part of that initial resolution that we are looking at today. So it's the project. Originally, they weren't sure what they were going to do with the 2 front buildings that sort of that touch Bridge Street. Because they didn't get as much to Restore New York, they were originally like, okay, well maybe we'll have to take these buildings down. However, they're also now seeking historic rehabilitation tax credits, which will provide a significant amount of funding into the project. But because there's state grant money in it, and because they're looking at these tax credits, SHPO has a lot to say about what they do with that building. So their plan as of now is to really, it's the renovation and equipping of the main building, and it's the stabilization of those, I call them annex buildings, the buildings that are kind of in between. And then that helps to satisfy SHPO's needs to go forward on this project. So it's a great project. We're still very much involved. Anything you wanted to add to that, Kevin, related to?
Well, just technical details. The initial resolution was updated by Barclay Damon. We've included a couple things in there. Both the Market House Oswego LLC and 1836 Brewing Company, as noted on the agenda, will be parties to our agreements, and part of that is a little bit different in some of our mixed-use buildings, but part of that is because the brewery is such a big part of the operation there, and 8 apartments in this 2-story brewery factory, dining area. So, and also a lot of the assets, should we need to claw something back, would be probably in the Market House, or sorry, would be at the brewery, tanks, equipment of that nature. They've also are in the process of applying for $200,000 of funding from us, from our HUD loan fund. We're not prepared to approve that loan today, but because of, that'll be the next meeting presumably, or as soon as we're ready to approve this pilot. But the initial resolution authorizes a public hearing. So the public hearing, because they're going to apply for the process of applying for the $200,000, it's above $100,000 limit. That benefit plus the benefits of the pilot package obviously is much more than 100,000 limit, and the 100,000 limit has to do with when we need to hold a public hearing. So, long story, everything's included in this resolution. The resolution is not approving the financing or approving any benefits. It's really just establishing the authority to hold a public hearing.
Mm-hmm. And just being more efficient, so we don't have to do 2 public hearings,
Yeah,
when we can really get away with 1.
Since we know this is coming, it's packaging all together just as the most transparent way to do it.
And if for some reason they don't take the funding, it doesn't matter that it's discussed at the public hearing.
Yeah, if we're even approved it,
Yeah.
they can decline it later if it doesn't fit
Yep.
their financing stack. So that's what's going on with this.
Can I get a motion and a second on the initial resolution, please?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we have to do it again, yeah.
Revised initial.
It's just a revised.
Yeah.
Motion by Lynn
Do the
Schick,
project
do I have a
on
second?
Yep.
Second.
Second by Barry Trimble. Is there any more questions or discussion regarding the initial resolution?
Gary, it's Trisha. I just have a question I want to confirm. I was asking, I think that the question was just answered. So there was an initial resolution that was done last summer.
Yes.
This is a new one because it's revised for the two combined. Is that correct?
The other revisions, there were a couple of clarifications made in the application, and it kind of hit a threshold, which Barclay Damon advised us we should have a new initial resolution approved. One of them was clarifying the number of apartments. It's 4 on a floor on the second and third floor, and then this issue about the fate of the 2 row buildings attached to the south end of the Old City Hall next to Bridge Street wasn't determined when we approved the initial resolution. It was left somewhat loose. Now they know that they're going to be stabilized and at least preserved. They won't be improved as part of the project. So that's another change too, because while the project costs have increased, they've reduced the scope because they're not improving those 2 buildings. I mean, they're still essentially doing the project, but they've cut down the ambitions for the number of apartments and things. But so that essentially I think in many ways the same project, but enough technical changes that we were advised to do a new resolution.
So it's a new resolution that supersedes the one that was previously presented.
Correct. Yes. Yep. The fact that the IDA approved the initial resolution last June is noted in this one, basically, and the explanation of why the new one has been approved.
Including the need for a public hearing.
Yes. Correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
And adding the financing in, of course, was a very big factor too,
Yep.
and kind of wrapping that in. But even without that, we would have had a new initial resolution today. So.
All set, Trish?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Is there any more questions or discussion regarding the initial resolution for the Market House Oswego Brewing Company? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Carried. Okay, number 7 on the agenda, the Diamond Key Properties Incorporated.
Right, so this is basically R&D Design and Associates down in our industrial park in Phoenix. Scott Antonacci is the owner, and they are a company that they work in the plastic molding industry, but very specialized, creating very specialized molds, working with molders for difficult to mold products for the end users. They do some little bit of assembly down there, and they've been there about 12.
No, not quite that. I would say probably like 6 years.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's like 6.
So the good news is they've expanded. They've actually built a new building on the site, and we have a pilot with them, and we've provided financing in the past. They built a new building without our support at their project site, which is under the pilot, and then basically they've built it with Scott's personal equity, and now they're looking to kind of do a cash out refinancing. And because we have a pilot in place, we're in the chain of title with the mortgage. So this is the basic consent to refinancing. They're staying with their incumbent bank, which is Chase Bank, and there's the new mortgage amount is $370,000, replacing an original mortgage amount of $196,000. Of course, that had been paid down now, so that they are not applying for any additional mortgage recording tax. For information, we could look at that to help this company because they haven't sought any other benefits for this expansion, but the legal cost to provide that exemption for the nominal amount of exemption it just wasn't worth it. So we went through that process with Barclay Damon and also with the client. But today what we're doing is consenting to the refinancing, and then the next step will be mortgage documents from the bank will be reviewed by Barclay Damon and make sure that the language is in there that needs to be, and to hold us harmless basically, and so forth. And we would sign on the mortgage as well also.
Non-recourse.
Non-recourse, thank you, Commissioner. Non-recourse.
Okay, can I get a motion and a second,
Make the motion.
financing?
I'll second.
Motion by Tim Stahl, seconded by Mark Greco. Is there any more discussions or questions for Kevin or Austin on,
What about the pilot? Will that change?
No,
I mean, they've increased the property.
it will increase what he pays as the new assessment kicks in, because this is an assessment-based pilot.
It is?
It is.
Yeah.
It's a uniform tax exempt policy.
So since he's 6 or
Okay.
6 or 7 years in, you know, he's working his way down that schedule to the lower abatements. So this happens sometimes with these long-term, especially with the 20-year pilots, you know, that additional assessment increasing investments are made. And that's how it, with the
So it is
assessment
based,
tied it.
so the pilot is assessment based.
Yeah, his payment will go up based on the
Okay.
assessed value going up, which will happen for
One
sure.
year you took.
Yep.
And there is a job creation aspect to this too. There are owner partners in a new company that has been started in this building, and really in the metal 3D printing
It's a
business.
really
And,
interesting project. Yeah.
in addition, the R&D design is quite busy, and they've been hiring some people to do some assembly work there for some of their molding clients. So,
Any other
Good
questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thanks, Trish. Carried. Okay, number 8, an update on the Micron Steering Committee.
Sure, I can give that. So, there's been a lot going on with this. So in late 2022, several county and regional stakeholders in economic development, workforce development, community development got together to begin an Oswego County Micron Steering Committee that would look at several areas of focus to get Oswego County prepared for Micron and everything that's going to kind of come along with that. This includes looking at business development, workforce development, housing, infrastructure, healthcare, transportation, and there's some other areas as well. To date, we've held several sort of steering committees that have kind of grown each time we do it. It kind of, the umbrella gets bigger and bigger. And just earlier this week, we held, at our last steering committee, we decided, okay, instead of us just meeting as groups and talking about this, we need to get into some work groups and actually, you know, start working on these different areas. So earlier this week, there was a joint meeting of the economic development and the infrastructure work groups. This week, we held this over at Steamers. I'm chairing the economic development, Dave Turner's chairing the infrastructure, and we kind of went through and we did sort of a, let's do a SWOT analysis of these are what our strengths, our weaknesses are, what are some of our threats, what do we need to address, what do we know, what do we not know, and then going forward, we're going to have this in the next month, we're going to have breakout meetings of economic development and infrastructure separately, and then we're going to get back together in May to make sure that our plans are not growing apart. They're growing to, you know, they're growing together and that they're interconnected. There is also going to be several other meetings of the other groups: workforce, education, healthcare. They're being chaired by other people on these. I want to also state that Christy Eck from SUNY Oswego is sort of spearheading. SUNY Oswego is using a lot of their resources to kind of hold meetings. They're developing a website for information for the public related to this. They are kind of keeping. They're kind of in charge of the steering committee part of it, but they're also very invested and focused on the workforce side. There's partners that are here today in the room who are also involved on this. So it is a good thing. We also this is not necessarily related to the Micron Steering Committee, but I attended last night the conference of mayors and supervisors out at Talwater, where they're getting all the elected officials involved and making sure that they're a part and are understanding of what's going on. So more to come on this. There's a lot going on in terms of looking at infrastructure, strategic site development, pulling together funding for these separate things, and just kind of make sure that we are moving forward in a planned way, and excited to see where this is going to go. The last thing to say on this is that we have stated that we want to have a sort of a plan for this, of all of these different groups coming together in the steering committee, putting this plan together in August. That's when we want to have this ready. So we don't have a lot of time. I mean, we're in March now, almost to April. We got 3-4 months left before we want to have this plan. So it's a lot of action, a lot of things are going to have to happen in a short amount of time. But from what we've seen, other than Onondaga County, knowing what they're getting with Micron and working on some of this stuff, we're probably the furthest ahead county outside of Onondaga County in making sure that we're prepared for what's to come. And that's, a lot of that is work that had already been done. I don't need to pat you guys on the back about acquiring the land down in Phoenix or Scruple, but that looks really smart now in terms of what we see, and some of the other investments that are going on too. Now, a lot of these things take time. Land acquisition, land development takes time. Infrastructure development takes time. but we're moving forward on things, and I think that we just got to keep that momentum going forward, and hopefully we can actually accelerate it on some of those things. So just want to give that update. I know you were there last night, Mark, as well for that meeting, and
Well, the only thing that I thought was a benchmark that was thrown out by Center State is that Onondaga's invested $40 million so far.
Mhm.
What have we invested?
yeah,
$2 million maybe into this. We really gotta kick this in gear a little bit.
Sure.
And I think we're all working towards that.
yeah. And I think that was one of the things that was stated at that meeting we had on Tuesday is that, you know, they're ahead, and you know, and they know what they're trying to go get. We're playing kind of catch up at this point in reacting in some ways. We've done some proactive things, but we're having to react in other ways, and funding is going to be critical. And I think that everybody who wants to get a part of this is going to have some skin in the game, and it's just going to be required on this. There's going to be a lot of grant money around, but nothing's going to get 100% paid for through grants. So people are going to have skin in the game if they want to be at the table.
Isn't the infrastructure at the plant, the industrial site there critical now?
Absolutely.
I mean, more
That's-
critical than timely than it was.
It's been identified by people like Dave Botar at Regional Planning Development Board as that is really the biggest thing right now. That's what priority and focus should be on, is getting that, because it's really the big hang up.
So I'm guessing the ideal situation would be to start working on it this year.
Yeah, there's still a gap in funding right now. I'm not gonna try to quote exactly what it is, but my recollection from what Dave Turner said is that it's somewhere in between $2 and $3 million is the gap right now between what they've raised and what they, you know, have allocated and where they need to get to.
Yeah, well, just going along with what Mark said, I mean, to me, that's one of the first steps.
Yeah.
To get that infrastructure
Sure.
over there done.
When there's other things going on as well, the town of Schuylkill is also looking at, hey, is there an opportunity for the town not only to just tie into the Village of Phoenix wastewater, but to actually get into the wastewater business themselves. And there's also efforts and initiatives going on evaluating if the county should get into the infrastructure game on sewer and water and things. So I think there's a lot of things going on. I think there's a lot of momentum. You know, there was stuff going on before this, but I think that this sort of has put a timetable on it and say, hey, if we want to benefit from this, we can't keep talking about this. We got to do this.
Well, Micron has a, March 31st is a goal for them for first step or something. If I remember correctly, that was a date that was a critical date in moving forward on March 31st.
Is that part of their environmental review process?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what it was. I don't remember the details of it, but I knew March 31st was a date for them that they had to make. Yeah.
Mark, you were going to say something?
Yeah, you know, you stated the obvious. I think that was obvious to everybody that's involved in it, that this industrial park is kind of like our ground zero for Oswego County. We really need to focus all our attention on that for right now, and then we can expand from there. You know, little steps, right? So we gotta move quick. Gotta step quickly, but we gotta start small and focus our efforts on that area particularly. And we're doing that, Austin.
Yep.
We've been having conversations back and forth on this for quite a while.
You've also seen though that the level of investment, particularly in the city of Oswego, and with the DRI award, and then what we've done with it, trying to prepare a community, one community for an influx, right? And make it attractive for anyone, but in particular now, Micron employees, executives to stay here, to locate here as opposed to somewhere else, right? So, but every community that wants that skin in the game is gonna have to come up with their own plan in that regard. And the fact that the village of Phoenix just received,
$4.5 million.
what's it, start?
It's a New York Forward, $4.5 million.
Forward
Yeah,
monies,
and Fulton still has their $10 million
Fulton, yeah.
to spend. So I mean, the timing is ideal. You have these three communities along 481 and the river that have all made or will be making investment in the near future, and they'll all be able to benefit from Micron.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask Fulton, have they done anything more? I mean, are they working more?
They're moving forward on stuff, and I will say that the mayor of Fulton has been very active in terms of communications related to Micron and trying to direct some of the funding that they have already received to try to make it Micron friendly or Micron related projects. So a lot of what they're looking at the Nestle site now, look at what they're, you know, and some of the other things is hey, this was not an opportunity that was here when we were originally talking about this. We should really focus this towards trying to create housing opportunities, business opportunities related to what's going to come from Micron, and not just sort of generic.
Okay, any more questions or comments? Okay, I think now we go into executive session. Kevin Caracoli, can you detail the reasons for going into executive session, please?
Yeah, fundamentally to discuss the financial history of a particular person or company.
Okay, so can I get a motion and a second to enter into executive session?
I'll move it.
Motion by Barry Trimble, seconded by Gary Toth. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
9:50.
opposed? At what time?
9:50.
9:50.
Here we go.
Okay, we'll come out of executive session, so do I have a motion and a second to come out of executive session, please?
I'll move it.
Motion by Barry Trimble, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Len Schick, at what time?
10:50.
10:50. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Carried. Okay, one item that we have to take action on, is a delinquent loan report. Can I get a motion and a second to accept the delinquent loan report?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Mark Greco, seconded by Tim Stahl. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried, thank you. Okay, any other business? Excuse me. Okay, I guess, we have to set the next meeting date.
Yeah, it's, would the last Thursday in April work, April 27th? I'm anticipating we're probably gonna be getting a couple ID applications, it gives us a little bit more time if we do it the 27th versus like, say, the 20th.
Yeah, we need time to hold that market house public hearing kind of conjunction with the cities.
But if not, I mean, that whole week, I mean, we could look at something that week, but Thursday seems to work for people.
It's okay with me.
I'm good.
I'm okay.
Okay, so
You good?
Okay.
9
Trish,
AM?
does that work for you?
Yep, that works.
Okay.
Okay, so next meeting is gonna be, Thursday, the April 27th at 9 AM?
Mm-hmm. Thursday, the 27th at 9, April 27th at 9 AM. Okay, is there anything else that needs to be discussed? I'm gonna take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mark Greco, seconded by
Very good.
Mary Trimble. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Trish, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks everybody, appreciate it.
See ya.
So would you say that,
I just wanna shut this down here first.
yeah,
Stop recording or?
You gotta stop the stream too, is it just hit the